you were sent out an agenda, that one page the other day, so that is the agenda for today. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented for corporate services, moved by Director Bauer, seconded by Director Bush. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we're going to move on with our draft budget. CAO Newell?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the budget's starting to take form. Everybody has a good idea now, sort of what's included in it. So up to this point, we've been talking really about those discretionary items that the board has a lot of control over, like grants, program changes, capital, some of the bigger policy issues that involve financial matters. So now that we've been through those a couple of times, Jim has got those all in the budget so that you should be able to see sort of globally what impact that will have on the ratepayers. And I know there's still lots of changes going on, and that's fine, that's part of the process as well. But we're starting to narrow down sort of the bigger, big picture pieces of it. So Jim's going to take you through that today. And I was just saying to the chair earlier, by the end of the day, what I'd really like to do is have a strong enough picture that we can form the budget bylaw, so we can get our bylaw in for first reading to the January 7th meeting. And once we get first reading, then we can begin our consultation process, a regulatory requirement for any budget process. But we want to be able to get it out to the public to see. And of course, with current restrictions, those will be electronic this year. So we'll set those up. And not, again, that members of the board still can't be making changes to the budget as well. But we really want to get out and get the consultation done so that then by when we move into February, we can start putting final form onto this, because the board's aware we have our regulatory requirement to submit our budgets by March 31st, whereas the incorporated communities have till the end of April. And I never like leaving it to the last minute. The last board meeting in March is too close. So really like to see us have this in for third reading by the first meeting in March. So that's sort of the timeline. And we'll just keep plodding forward so that we have a really good document done by the end of February. So we'll turn it over to Mrs. Safino, and he'll start taking us through it.
Thank you, directors, chair. I look forward to presenting this 55-page, short 55-page PowerPoint presentation. As you do have a copy in front of you, I hope. And as you can see on the screen, it is draft budget number 2, 2021. It's actually 2021 to 2025. So far, I've got effective and transparent because every item in the budget is it's itemized, all 155 pages. I added one more budget regarding equipment. I never saw the equipment as a line item in the budget, so from now on you'll see it whenever there's equipment asked to be purchased. The board did approve it, but not as a page that has a specific listing of the vehicles being purchased. So with that, I just want to brief outline for any of the directors that missed the first 2 meetings. There's 155 separate budgets, and of that, there's 155 services that go along with that. Separate budgets ensure only that those who participate in the service pay for the service. And one of the things that I found interesting is the tax software that we use to make sure that that is applied and everyone is charged only for the services that they apply is still the same one that we used 14 years ago. And we are going to be looking at, the only thing that I see that needs to change is some of the descriptions and who pays. So it may say, let's say it says area H may pay, but it's corrected if area H bowed out and changed it. So That part of it's right. I've gone through it. John Cote is very good at working with that software while I was gone, and he kept good care of it for us. So each service, as you may know, is self-sustaining. So that means that we cannot take money from one service to fund another. So, and that's essentially the same thing as if it was a municipal government. A water service cannot fund general, and general cannot fund sewer, water. So that's consistent with the local government. Okay, with each separate budget, only those participating in the service will pay either through taxes, parcel tax, or user fees. So I verified that, and that's correct. So what changed from draft 1 to draft 2? The board approved the grant and aid, and that's, you see that those approvals, those are now in the system and part of your tax requisition as it stands. And by the way, if there's any questions along the way, I'm sure that I'll stop and answer them. What else changed? The board also approved what you see here for the change requests. That's in the budget and also redistributed as the services show. Now, one of the major changes that is different is the mosquito program. That changed in two different ways. One way is how it was allocated for each of the areas and how that $34,000 was reallocated back. So that's been corrected and in your current budget. So the other thing is the board authorized a number of capital projects. I think the only thing is that it's easy to say that the chairs weren't authorized and the sign. Pretty well everything else that came to the board was authorized. And I thought the board might be interested in knowing that you authorized $13.8 million worth of capital projects. Of this amount, 4.7 is contingent on receiving grants. So unless we receive those grants, there's no spending and for that project. And $251,500 charged was for information services, and that in reviewing of how $251,000 would benefit, it actually benefit, the majority of that would benefit a good portion of the regional district services. So that part of it increased the administration fee, and that also reflects the new philosophy that we had. The formula did not change, it's just the actual amount that was redistributed changed. And okay, so with that, $146,000 of those expenses were classified as COVID safe restart fund. So just wanted to let the board know that that's one reason why it's $251,000. So the remaining $8.1 million has been charged capital administration as per the policy. So the board authorized the policy where there's 20% of the administration fee goes towards capital. That's in your budget now. And in those areas where the budget is funded either grant or by reserves, that's where the extra administration charges would have been charged against. So I just want to let the board know that's 300, it's total 301,000, and it's actually the next page. So Noel, if you want to go to the next, that is how it's distributed, and that's the formula, how it's just over $300,000, and it's based on the dollar amount of the project. The assumption is, and the assumption goes across the board with not just regional districts but municipalities, the higher the cost of the project or capital operating, the more administration, the more follow-up there is. So with that money is not, in most cases, there are a few cases where if it's funded from taxes, and there are some capital projects funded from taxes because the reserves aren't enough to fund it, would have normally been charged against a tax requisition. It's saved approximately, I would say at the end of the day, probably $260,000 not charged against your own taxes.
Question?
Go ahead, Director Johansson. Are you there, Director Johansson?
Sorry, I'm
You're on mute.
unmuted
Okay,
now.
go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Jim, my question around admin budgets and just wanting to confirm, I know that we had talked about our refuse disposal line item in our budget, and we'll have a conversation about that later, but I did notice a marked increase in admin fees there, and I assume they're associated by the compost facility grant. And what I'm wondering about is if that's the case and that grant only happens in 2021, would those admin fees drop off in the next year? It seems in that line item that those admin fees just carry on in perpetuity, so to speak, and just wondering how. I'm thinking with capital that admin should come on and admin should drop off. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. First of all, just so that the board knows, if a project is carried over from one year to another, you're only paying for the admin fee for that 1 year. The admin fee does not carry over. You will see an admin fee on the operational part that continues, and there's an anticipated increase, I believe, of just under 2% per year in the future years. But that's not capital. The administration fee on capital is charged against the capital project. So if you had a project, $300,000 for capital expenditures, you will see I have notes that when we have our meetings, you will be able to see. It will show $300,000 plus $2,500 of admin fee, and that's just for that 1 year. And if the manager in charge of that service gave me a 5-year projection of different capitals, it will show the capital projection for the 5 years. But your administration fee is not going to be compounded. It will drop off after this year and start all over again. Each year, they would have to have a new formula.
And just as a follow-up, so the administration charges line item does not include administration charges that are associated with capital items in that budget, I guess I would say.
That's correct. The administration on the operational is based on the formula and the philosophy that the board chose, but anything to do with the administration for capital, that's in the capital cost, because now it becomes a capital cost against the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Rieger, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Am I being heard?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So also a question related to the admin fees on these capital projects. So looking at the rates for the various sizes of projects, running from 1.21% for projects under 10,000 up to 4.95%. I don't think that fits into what I believe was approved when we said to go to having overhead on capital projects. And bottom line, it was referred to there in the 4 tiers for capital. It would be on major operations and partial service and minimal service. And certainly when we have partial or minimal service in the operating budget, which uses the same terms for the tiers, we're talking in part around the complexity of working on the project rather than just simply the size of the project. So if you have a water or sewer or perhaps a complex environmental project that requires a greater variety of service, the fee can be or the tier can be a higher level. So what's happened with the capital projects? I've worked out that we have approximately 340 projects are what's being covered by this $300,000 fee, and there's 2 projects in effect that fit in this $151,000 showing in on the major operation tier 5. That $151,000 for 2 projects, I'm not sure which projects they are. They might be the Okanagan Falls sewer project, and it might be Campbell Mountain, for instance. But bottom line, if it is those two projects are being charged $151,000. But there actually is that, and by the way, that's for just over $3 million worth of projects. But there's actually $8.8 million worth of projects for the remainder of these tiers. And I calculate that to be, there's probably about 330 projects there. So for those 330 projects and $8.8 million worth of capital work to be done, they're being charged $145,000. And just simply based on the size of the project, nothing to do with complexity. If you have a complex $50,000 construction or sewer or water, small project, but still complex, it's going to be charged simply on the size of the project. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it follows really the thought of how we took this $300,000 out of was currently charged to the operating accounts and put it over here. That really half of this money now would be charged on the two largest projects in the regional district, and the other 337 capital projects get charged the other half. I just don't think that was the interpretation that applies to how overhead should be allocated in capital. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Jim.
Thank you. So back 2 meetings ago, when I presented to the board the administration fee, I did discuss the 5-tier system where the 5th tier is capital, and I also stated that the 5th tier will have at least 5 sub-tiers, and it would all depend at the end of the day. You are correct, there's over 300 projects, but that's over the 5 years. We now have a 5-year listing project tracker for capital projects. However, what you're seeing there is 2021. And one of the things that I did not charge the capital charge is projects that are contingent on grants, because I cannot be sure that the grant will be received. So I wiped that off of the formula, and I used the formula based on the same formula we have for operations. And that the assumption is, because it's the simplest assumption that you can make, is the more the budget, the higher the cost of the budget, the more work that there's involved. And I used the formula to calculate the administration fee, as you see. Just guessing off the top of my head, that $301,000 plus that is redistributed is probably 25 to 30 capital projects, not 300. Again, you are right. There is that many projects, which is, I'm very happy that the managers in this organization was able to put that many projects in one quick time. And I expected, and I hope that eventually it will expand to 10 years. But what you see there is 1 year. And it's the tax requisition that we're looking at for 2021. So I did not have the projected tax requisition for the other years, because a lot of them, even more, would be dependent on grants for 22, 23 and onwards. So it would be very difficult, if at all practical, to even try to estimate what the administration fee would be for past 2022. But if you go back to my PowerPoint presentation for the first meeting at the Lakeside, you will see that there was a 5 A, B, C, D, and that this is what I was projecting would happen, and that's what would happen. And as far as the $301,000, it is distributed to the appropriate capital project and the appropriate service, if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any further questions at this stage before Jim moves on? Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. So if I could continue with updated budget. So as stated on your screen there, what was updated? So the Okanagan Regional Library, since draft 1 to 2, the levy came in, and it was nice to see that it did drop a bit. So, and the administration charge has been updated to reflect the new charges. So what that means is, with the add-ons and the buy-ons that you added on, there was an administration change. The percentage and the formula will automatically change. For instance, is if next week, and I have a number of meetings with a lot of the directors, you take off some and reduce some capital projects, and there are some, especially wood chipping, that seems to be a major issue. As those are deleted, the administration is redistributed. And one of the things that I need to say too is there's going to have to be a cutoff where at one point, just so that we can do the budget on time and have it go to the first reading, as you reduce the capital projects after a specific date, and just to be fair, I'd like to make it to the end of December. So that way the board has quite a lot of time. Then we freeze the administration fee in time. And that's not uncommon. That's something that I've actually have done in another jurisdiction. So first of all, if I may have the permission of the board to do that.
Yeah, so what you're saying, Jim, is when people remove certain things, then that administration charge needs to be reallocated.
Yeah, each time.
Which will affect everybody's.
Yes.
Electoral area budgets or
yes.
overall budgets. So EA directors, if you haven't met with Jim or haven't spoken to him before changes, I'd encourage you to get on that ASAP and book to speak with Jim about your electoral area budgets as soon as possible.
And I just want to be fair to everyone. So that one of the reasons why I didn't use Questaga and I created my own program is specifically for the administration. So I can give you that option. If I was using Questaga, I would more than likely ask for the cutoff after sometime in the middle of December. But it gives me a little bit more leeway.
Right. So Jim's asking if that can be done by December 31st. I'm sure nobody wants to be getting together on the 31st. So let's shoot for a little bit earlier than that for a meeting with Jim.
And I realize nobody would want to, but if they would, I'll make myself available right up until the last day.
Yeah, you'll have a New Year's drink with you.
Okay. 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we on, where are we on types of services? Okay, so types of service. So the next section is I just want to briefly discuss the types of services that are involved in the 155 services that we have. I've listed the actual costs and compared the cost from 2020 to 2021. And then I've just, if you've gone and peeked to see what's in the future of this presentation, is I've talked about the material variances. And in some cases, $5,000 is material, just because it may be 80% of the previous tax requisition. So material has a lot of different meanings. It's not just because the dollars are excessively high, it's just because the percentage of the tax requisition increase is high. So with regional services where a majority of electoral areas and municipal participate. For regional services, all the properties in the municipal and electoral areas contribute. And I thought it might be interesting, $54,040 equates to 1% increase in taxes. So in this case here is if you as a director would like to decrease something, you'd have to bring this back to the board as a whole, rather than if it's your own specific electoral area where you can make the change there. It will affect administration costs. However, the board will also see the changes. I'll be keeping track of the changes as they occur, and you would have an idea of what this means admin-wise and tax-wise for each area. So,
okay, we'll just grab a question here from Director Holmes and then Director Roberts. Go ahead, Director Holmes.
Thank you. Are there any regional services where not everybody does participate?
yes, there are. Not everybody participate. The next page actually shows, we're on it now. The next page actually shows, if you look at destruction of pests, for instance, there you'll see Penticton.
I was going to ask about that. And so only Penticton and Summerlin have pests. Nobody else has pests, or how does that?
I guess they only live in Penticton and Summerland.
No, you've got
We-
the rest of them.
yes.
Different.
There's
A lot of
another,
people agree with
there's
that.
others,
Why you got those in regional? Those aren't regional programs.
that's how they are in the system, so I just
Yeah.
downloaded it.
Sometimes you just have to update.
And that's what I was saying, we need to update, there's things in there that have not changed in 14 years.
Right.
So that's a list.
We do have pests in the electoral areas, it's just not.
Yeah, I think there are still some areas that don't participate. I think it's age and disease.
I believe so. I've also paid separately, like Area F did a long time ago. We did a pilot project on rat control. We did just some 1 or 2 year funding for
Yeah,
rat
I
control
think
program.
that's what
The type of
it is.
pests. It's the pests we have. Rats.
So one of the things that is in my to-do list for early next year is to take a look at what the programs are classified as. These I downloaded directly from Questica, and while Questica is awesome software, it's only as good as what was entered in there, and it needs to be updated. So you're going to see this updated to what I believe would be correct. Essentially, I'll be doing an audit of this. So on this report, what you'll see, and there's pests in somewhere else in there? You just take a look in farther down in here. So one of the things that I did change on this report, and
Oh, sorry,
sorry,
we should go to Director Roberts first. Yeah, go ahead, Director Roberts.
Thank you to the chair. So again, as I kind of wrap my brain around overall philosophies, when we talk about services that are across the board and us wanting to look at fair and equitable transference of costs, when we look at things like, and I'm going to hit the mosquito situation again, where area C, B, and G are paying a huge amount of money that's coming up. And again, we look at fair and equitable. We look at, yes, if something's dipped and there's a lot more mosquitoes 2 or 3 years ago, but we're also enveloped or wrapped around municipal communities that in and of themselves are given benefit in regards to the work done around their communities. I find something that the balance looks to be a little bit askew. We're looking at huge numbers, and then also tying into that, is there a mechanism in regards to saying, okay, there's a cap? So for instance, something like the mosquitoes, like I would like to eradicate all mosquitoes, but that may not be practical. Also, my taxpayers can't afford it. But if every year I'm going up exponentially in a place where I can't afford a service, but I'm tied to the RDOS as an over-encompassing service, but others are going down and we keep going up, where's the balance? And then how do we find a way forward to be able to maybe create a better sense of equity in regards to those neighboring communities that also benefit by said service? Thank you.
So equitable, first of all, every one of those services would have a bylaw that would have a tax limit. There's 2 types of limits for each one of the services. There's a dollar limit, and then there's a mill rate limit. And usually the mill rate limit gives you the ability to probably 3 to 4 times higher than the tax limit. And that was originally would have been created to protect the taxpayer in the service. And some of them, I just looked at one the other day that went back to 1997. So there's a lot of them that need to be updated. And one of the things that you're going to see in the future, because I did not have the time to do it this year, is you're going to see another line on here that actually will show you the tax limit. Because a lot of times when I see a tax increase material, I will go to the bylaw and look at what is the limit, and then say, okay, it meets or doesn't. And in some cases, in prior years and before way back when, the tax limit exceeded the actual limit, and that's something that you'll be able to see immediately. But as far as fair, talking about the mosquito program, a board way back when would have made a decision of what is fair, and a formula would have applied, and I believe it's a 3-year floating average. And based on the 3-year floating average of the usage, that's who pays a major percentage of it. There's 5, I believe, 5 different areas that are paying into that service, and it'll fluctuate from year to year. And I looked at the way that it is redistributed, and sometimes it's material, where it depends on the rain and the water in the area, where in one case it may be 10%, and then in another case it may jump to 50%, and that's a huge increase to your taxpayer. But that's why there's a 3-year average. Now, the board may want to look at that and change it to 5. Well, if 3 was good back then with all the climate changes that are happening in the world, maybe 5 might be something you may want to look at. But at some point, the board would have received the recommendation and reviewed the recommendation to see how fair it is to their area. And that's something that you always have the capability of asking. If you want to relook at something, the board would have to ask through the CAO for staff to review it, come back with a revised formula. And there's quite a few that are formalized where you pay based on an average.
Okay, thank you. We have a few more questions. Director Knoedel, go ahead, please.
Like Tim, I'm going to kind of pick on mosquito control here. That seems to be a budget that's spiraling out of control. And that's $62,000 for 3,500 people, I guess my population is. I can buy an awful lot of off for that, but it seems to be staff controlled right now. And, limiting that budget is going to become a necessity, especially in a year like this year where we have people that are going to be in dire straits. I mean, that's one budget I'd be willing to suspend for a year just to see us get through the time of COVID, but I'm not sure if that's possible. We are going to have people that are going to have serious problems with their taxes this year. And, projects like this, they just keep spiraling up and up without any kind of check or balance, it seems. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go to CIO Newell.
So you are the check and balance, Director Knoedel. So we have staff that get invested in their programs, ensure they'll bring forward proposals for upgrades or enhancements because they are usually the ones that get the complaints from citizens. So when they do that at the board level, if you don't like what you see, then you bring forward a motion to either approve or deny. If you have a program that you think is already too high, then bring forward a motion to reduce the budget, and we'll adapt the program to whatever the board decides they want to do. But you're the one that needs to bring that forward at this time. This is where the board oversight comes into play. But we need the perspective of the board, not one member. So you bring forward a motion, you discuss it, and as whatever the board decides, that's what we're going to do.
Is this the time to do that?
Absolutely.
Then I move that we hold the last year's level for mosquito control for Area C.
Well, I think it has to be the program. It's got to be the service.
Yes.
Can't do it for one.
Then the question becomes redundant, doesn't it?
No, this service is based on a 3-year average of use. So wherever those mosquito control people, I'm not sure what we call them.
Close enough.
Wherever they spend their time and it gets coded to, the 3-year average is what gets applied for the next year. So as the average changes, in the next year's application will change as well. So if you wanted to say, if you wanted to make a motion that we remain at 2020 rates for 2021, then it would affect those participants.
Is that
But it
not
wouldn't change it wouldn't change. We couldn't set a level just for Area C when it's a multi-area program. it will affect everybody, because based on that budget that we set for that service, it would get applied throughout all of the participating areas.
So Director Knodel, did you want to redo your motion?
I'm not sure what the wording would look like. I think I get the drift, but I'm not sure how to word it to bring in 2020 level. Sorry.
Yeah, so if it was just a local program, just applicable to Area C, you could say, I want the 2020 rates and just applicable to Area C, and that would be fine. We could do that. With a service that involves more than one participating area, then what you could do is make a motion that the rates for the mosquito control program remain at the 2020 levels, and then open that up for discussion, and the board would vote as to whether they like that or not.
Right, so Director Knodel, do you want to just say ditto to what CIO Newell said as your motion?
Yeah, it's I don't think that's going to fly, because some areas have seen substantial reductions in that particular budget line, so they won't be too eager to move back to last year's standard.
See, in this program, if there are fewer mosquitoes, say in Area C in 2021, and they don't, mosquito people don't spend as much time there, in 3 years, you would see the outcome of that, because it's based on that 3-year average.
So
Do you want to think on this?
Well, basically what we're saying is there's no possibility for relief on that item for the taxpayers in these dire times.
We could say that we would requisition at the same level that we did in 2020, if that was your motion. And then it would be, I think we had 2 program changes on mosquitoes this year. One, to extend the period, like either to start 3 weeks earlier or to end 3 weeks earlier. So if you were to say just keep it at 2020 levels, then what it would do effectively, I think, would be to remove those program changes.
Can you go back to the extra charges?
Fair enough. I'd be willing to make that motion.
Okay.
Where it shows
Okay, so we have a motion from
going.
Director Knodel. Now, I do already have hands
there,
up that
right
we're
there.
going to ask questions, so I just need to see a seconder. Is that you, Director Roberts? Are you seconding? Looks like you're, yes, enthusiastically seconding. Okay, great. So we have a motion on the floor. Now I'm going to go to the folks that have comments or questions. I've got Director Roberts next, please.
I believe you might have Director Holmes before me, unless that was a hand left over.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Director Holmes, would you like to go ahead, please?
It doesn't matter what order I speak. So, so if we leave at 2020 levels, that enhanced service, that extra person, I think we're making a part-timer into a full-time or extending the seasons, that just won't happen. I in that situation.
Yes.
Yeah, we tailor
Right.
our labor force to the money available.
So how do you deal with the situation where, like we in Summerland aren't satisfied with the level of mosquito control, and we want it enhanced, and so we kind of support this enhancement, but then how do you accommodate that? But then how do you at the same time accommodate other areas who want a reduction in services? Is it possible just to keep it at 2020 levels and shift the service levels a bit, and then over 3 years their budgets will go down and ours will go up?
Yeah, this program change is about extending the response. So it's about extending the season where we hire mosquito control people. So it would mean I'm anticipating that what happened was that we got lots of complaints in 2020.
Yes.
That indicated to our staff that they needed to start the program earlier or to go later. So that's why they've got the program change in. So it is usually based on citizen complaints as to where they spend their time. A lot of times, if it's a really wet year, then those areas that have lots of standing water will need more attention, and those that don't would probably get less. So it does fluctuate from year to year, and that's why the 3-year average was brought in. I'm assuming. So, but here's one of these programs where you've agreed to act as a regional board of directors rather than those 15 different constituencies that we have around the table. So and I'm not sure how far mosquitoes fly, but it's likely they don't recognize the lines on our map. And it really does depend on the year as far as which water sources are higher than others. But I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with just saying enough is enough and just hold the line at the 2020 amount, and then we'll adjust the program. But if we get a bad year and more people are complaining and you're starting to get the complaints at the political level, then I think it's probably late by that time. I think our guys have to get out and do their spraying early in the season and then just do the adulticide sort of later on. So I'm not sure we could adjust if we halfway through a year, if we get a bad year. Those are the variables that our mosquito program addresses, and that's why I think they just want to make sure that they can get out there early enough or stay late enough to address the problem.
Okay, thank you.
May I follow up?
Yes, go ahead.
So, we are getting complaints at the political level. And this is why I kind of support this change. But then I also sympathize with those rural areas where it's not such a priority. So surely there must be a way where everybody can get what they want. Why does somebody have to be penalized one way or another because there's mosquitoes? I think they don't fly over mountains. Our municipal boundaries are penned in by mountain ranges and water, and so they do stay local. So I'm kind of frustrated by this, that there's no way that both people's desires can't be accommodated.
I'm not sure where our 3-year average thing is entrenched. Is that in the establishment bylaw? So what we have to do, Director Holmes, is when that service was created, the board identified how they wanted the expenses allocated. So we need to bring that back, and the board could change that. But right now, it's, as I understand, it's entrenched in the bylaw.
Yes.
Right. Is it an option? I mean, right now we have this basically a regional service. If there's a specific area that has more desire to do more treatment for mosquitoes, could they not create their own service for additional funding outside of that to have more treatment in their area? It's a process, obviously.
Yes, well, certainly an incorporated community could apply to exit the service, and the rest of the board could decide whether they wanted to do that. That'd be sort of like a service review, and then create their own program. There's various ways of doing that, but at this point we just follow the bylaw.
Yeah, and that would be a greater discussion in the future that can't be solved in time for this budget, but it could come back to the board for discussion.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm thinking is, we could certainly provide direction to staff that just not respond in a certain area, but still, we would still requisition the amount that the board approves in the budget, and it would still be applied in the same manner. So area C, if they said for 2021, we don't want to have a response as far as mosquito control goes. Just don't come out. It would still be under our current system. It would be probably the third year that they'd notice that benefit, because that's what you've entrenched in your bylaw.
Okay, we have quite a list of hands up for this mosquito discussion, so I'm gonna move down the line here. Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. In response to Director Holmes, again, one of the things is when we look at going back to the 2020 level, again, Summerland was happy with what has happened. And the projection of the additional 34,000 is for, again, tied to that 3-year projection and what may make things better. Director Bush and I voted against that increase because, of course, we were going up already between the two of us 31,000 this budget. The last year we went up 18,000. And I remember when I was, when it was 2018, when most of us, or a bunch of us new ones came on board. And again, we extolled what was happening with the mosquito organization, program and service, because again, 2018 was the flood year. We had the worst, the worst mosquito time. And then it seems like we've been paying ever since. Like it's almost like there hasn't been a stop or a breather to kind of see whether or not the changes, because there was changes that we did in that budget. There were changes and increases that we did in the next budget. And it's almost, the part that I'm finding difficult, it's like, can we stop, take a breath, which I think this is what this motion is, which I support, to just take a breather and see what happens. And again, maybe we need to reevaluate how this goes out and how it's dealt with. Because again, I live in an area that I don't have a Best Western, I don't have a golf course, not saying that those are the ones, but I don't necessarily have a lot of those resources, but all of a sudden, I'm going up and up and up in regards to a couple people, living rurally that may not be able to afford. And I'm definitely wanting to look at the future, a cap on how far we go. But again, thank you. I do understand the 3-year. I think that maybe we need to look at that process, and I support the not increasing with the 34,000 as I voted for prior. I think that would be a help and at least a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Bush.
Yeah, thanks. So, I'd like to keep this budget at the 2020 level. And I'd also like to have the bylaw looked at. I think with time tracker and everything that we could do this on a far less average than a 3-year average. It's also by the time the mosquitoes are out, it's too late. So we're getting all these calls for mosquito control for mosquitoes where we can't stop. It's the larva stage that has to be stopped. That's where the program has to be. So because people are phoning in and saying there's mosquitoes, and people, it's not right. I think the director should also be involved on this complaint program as well, because there's got to be some common sense to it. You can't, just because you got mosquitoes, it doesn't mean you can change that instantly. I mean, it has to be all done before there's mosquitoes. So I don't think we need this extra cost to the program. Let's keep the program we got and just use it where it's needed. And I think that's about it for now, but I'd really like to have a look at the bylaw being changed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Gettins. Go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. I'm trying to remember Lisa's presentation, because I thought part of this increase in mosquito control also was able to increase our labor force at a less cost than hiring the labor. Wasn't that part of her presentation? It's not just the mosquitoes, but we had more staff at a less cost to do other things.
I'll go to Jim on this
Yeah,
one.
yes, and it's on the screen right now. Third from the top, you'll see $34,000 mosquito program. That was an ask for a change in service
That was to add
And that's what we're,
on,
to add on staff.
to add on staff.
so that's what we're talking about here with the increase that, and like I understand that it's been reallocated, but that extra $34,000 is not, if we just stay at 2020, then we're going to lose that opportunity to increase our labor force. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think that warrants more discussion then, because it sounded like a good plan that Lisa was putting forward that was beneficial in other areas. So I just want to caution the board on that.
So my understanding is this extra labor force is what we're cutting, is what this motion will do. We'll cut it. It just means less treatments out there, really.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving a program a try either. If you wanted to stay at 2020, then we should be able to produce the same results that we get in 2020. The staff is saying it would be enhance the program if we started earlier, and that's what the program change was. So, but this is really where the board, and I don't want to, at this point, the board should have enough information in order to discuss amongst themselves. So I don't want it to appear that administratively we're advocating one way or the other. The money part is really up to you, and then we adjust the program to wherever you want to go. So if Area C wanted to see an impact right away, the product of that, the evidence would be to just reduce the overall budget, I'm not sure how we could do some research on it. We could pull that bylaw out and bring it back at a later time. But at this point, the easiest answer to say to Director Knodel is, if you want to reduce the amount that your citizens are being taxed for mosquito control, is just don't approve that much money. Cut the budget.
So that would, if the motion Director Knodel has made is approved, it's going to remove the third line on the screen here.
We would address our staff resources to whatever money is allocated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if I can follow up then, Director Knodel is looking for a decrease on the mosquito control improvements only, which is a net change of $3,600. And by remaining at the 2020 level, we then will lose this opportunity to increase our labor force that is my understanding is needed by engineering, not just the $4,000, but if we stay at the 2020 level. So is there a way to absorb, because I do think this is a regional discussion, and I remember with Director Holmes last time discussing about the value and what our citizens value, and if the citizens of Area F value the lack of mosquitoes in Summerland and Area C is not valuing at the same level, is there a way to absorb that extra amount of money in order to keep this opportunity to keep the labor that Lisa presented?
So that's what we have to research. I mean, typically the methodology for how we collect money on a service is entrenched in the service establishment bylaw. So
right.
If that's the law, then we're more or less obligated to follow that. Whether we can bring the bylaw forward for an amendment, or if there is flexibility to change the methodology, I mean, we have to do some checking on that.
I would like that information before we make a change.
Okay, well, right now we do have a motion on the floor that we will need to vote on, unless it's deferred. Let's work through the rest of the comments. We have Director Obrick next, please.
Yes, and thank you to the chair. I agree with and support the comments just put forth by Director Gettens. In Area D, I've heard many concerns, and we had a lot of mosquitoes with the record flood years of 17 and 18. Mosquito control is something that is very important in our area, and With respect to more information, I have two thoughts. One is I know the CAO already answered that he doesn't know how far a mosquito flies, and Director Holmes made reference to the mountains. But I think it'd be real interesting to know how far the mosquitoes fly. That may be real relevant to a review. We might consider a mosquito deportation policy where we can send those mosquitoes back to Area C or other areas. But with respect to the second point, perhaps we should have a review of the bylaw and reconsider the formula and the allocation to bring it into a more fair balance. I think how far the mosquito flies is probably relevant. If these mosquitoes are going to stay in Costin, for example, we may not mind in Area D. If, however, the mosquitoes from Area C are going to fly into Area D, we maybe would like to know that before we make a decision. So more information is my request as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Knodel.
It's an interesting discussion. We're definitely going to have to, in my opinion, look at the bylaw as a whole. But in the meantime, I'd be more than happy to move 30% of my budget over to Summerland, and they can enjoy the benefits of that. And I'd still be higher than the next highest area. And that's part of the problem. Area F at $800, Area D at $8,000, Summerland at $21,000, and Area C at $62,000. It makes for a very uneven playing field. And I know that Director Bush comes in second to me at $40,000. These are really high numbers for these areas to be picking up. And this year, we definitely need some relief. We're going to have people in dire straits, and it's a one-year hold. That's what I'm looking for in the meantime. And after that, then we can open the bylaw and take a serious look at how this is distributed. And I think there needs to be a little more area control on how it's delivered. If you're getting complaints, then you should be able to up your service level in the next year without impacting everybody else in the area. In my case, I'm willing to take those complaints directly if there's weight on them. But to see a budget that spirals out of control in a year that we have a looming financial crisis, it seems a little irresponsible. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to CIO Newell.
Yeah, so this is one of those philosophical discussions, and we have it from time to time. But again, it's not like through the mosquito control program we're picking on Area C. This is a previous decision of the board of directors, and they perpetuate. They don't stop at the end of a term. Once the board makes a decision, it gets entrenched in law. So this is how we're supposed to collect the money for this mosquito control program. And it's really, I think Area E is not a member of mosquito control, and there may be a couple of municipalities that aren't either. I'm not sure on this one. But this is the way that the regional district collects from those citizens that are participating in the service. It's not like we're budgeting a certain amount for Summerland or a certain amount for Area C or for Area A. If we have 85,000 citizens in the regional district that are benefiting from a program, and the establishment bylaw says that we're going to collect whatever the board approves as a budget through land and improvements, then that's what we do, and each citizen then pays the same amount of money for the program based on what their property is assessed at. So with mosquito control, the board has altered that somewhat, saying that we're gonna budget the allocation based on use over a 3-year average, and then we're going to charge, I assume, based on land and improvements. So that's where I'm saying if we want to change the structure of the mosquito control program, we're going to have to look back at the bylaw and the history. There's other ways. I mean, you saw when the sterile insect release program came in and presented to the board that just by the agreement of their members in 2006, they changed the way that they were collecting their taxes, because they are a requisitioning body, they changed it just by agreement. And then they'll try and fix their legislation later. That's what they came in and told us this time, where they froze their land assessment at 2006 levels, which contravened the MEWA legislation that they have. Now they're going to go back and try and fix that up, and they're going to bring it back into a court. So it's all about the will of the board. You have to set what amount of money you want to collect from those citizens that are participating in the program. You have to set the way that you want to tax them. And we do that through the establishment bylaw. Or you can tell us to find a way around that, but that can only go for a short period of time too. Eventually, we would have to change our enabling legislation as well, which is our service establishment bylaw. So if you just want to cut the 2021 budget, easily done. Just make a motion, we'll put in what you want us to put in. If you want to look at the structure of how this mosquito program is formed and how you're going to tax in the future, that's a bigger discussion for us.
Okay, we have more questions or comments here. I'm going to go with Director Roberts next, please.
Thanks to the chair. And that was kind of the philosophical question that I started with. It was more about looking at how this works. Like, for instance, a couple of days ago, we get the next draft budget. We've talked about an allocation of admin costs, which will create a change one way or the other. And we've gone with the CFO's choice number one. But at the time when we first brought up in regards to the $34,000 increase as a whole, at that time, I was going to be paying $16,271 more. Now the draft budget comes in, a few days ago, and now I'm paying $21,000 less. And Area C is paying 60-something thousand. For me, it's like I'm trying to wrap my brain around. Like, I make adjustments, or I talk about, or I look at things when I come to see the CFO, and then it's like this humongous difference that doesn't even equate to the 34,000, and I'm struggling with understanding. And I use the mosquito because that really stood out to me in regards to the differential between two drafts, and I couldn't wrap my brain around how do I make a choice when I really can't figure out the structure or the process, even when I go in and I sit down and I ask. Anyways, I'll pass this on to other people.
Thank you, Director Roberts. I'll go to.
If I may, between draft one and draft two, there was a material change in the way the formula was being calculated. And if Lisa is on, I think that she needs to explain the change. If
like, if we want to get through the budget, this is not the time to fight the mosquito program.
Yeah, I think we need to decide on the motion. Are we going to stay with the 2020 amount, or are we doing the proposed increase at this time? And then it sounds like we may need to, in the future, bring it back for
Sure,
service
we'll bring the program
review.
back to committee.
Yeah, to committee. So let's move through the rest of the speakers here. Director Gittins, you're next, please.
Thank you to the chair. I just want confirmation that if we approve the motion on the floor, and I understand, and fundamentally, I hear what Director Knodl's saying, and it doesn't seem like an equal way to do a regional program. It seems unfair. But if we do agree to this motion on the floor, do we lose that opportunity for that extra labor that Lisa had mentioned in her presentation? I just want confirmation on what the consequence of this motion is, please.
So yeah, we would take out, we would set the 2021 budget at whatever the board tells us to set it at, and we arrange our labor resources around that.
And just as a follow-up, if we do move this motion forward, is there an opportunity for that labor to come up in a different budget? Is there a way to keep that staff, that benefit of the extra few weeks of those particular staff people?
I mean, you could bring it back at first and do an amendment, but I'm not quite sure where you're going with that, Director Gittens.
If I can, I'm trying to recall Lisa's presentation because I thought through what she was suggesting with this program, we also had access to the labor force for more weeks, not just to work on mosquitoes, but to other projects this group of staff people are working on. My understanding was that we were getting savings by having these staff on our payroll longer. That's the piece that I'm trying to figure out, and I'm just going to find out.
Anyway.
Say that again, please.
If it wasn't to do with mosquitoes, it shouldn't have been in the mosquito program anyway.
If I may,
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
of the 34,000, it did state mosquito program, but we redistributed 17,000 to other programs, so 18,000 would be charged against that program. Yes, we talked about that in one of the meetings.
Thank you. So
if
that
we
is
make
my
a change-
question.
If we make a change now, we certainly have the opportunity to change it back if the board should decide they'd like to do that. We're just trying to put some things to bed here to get to first reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we could just do the resolution, Madam Chair. Give us some direction there.
Okay, so we still have Director Bush on the list. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I'm still in favor of removing 34,000 or 18,000 or whatever it is on the mosquito program, and also freezing it at 2020 budget level, especially because of the COVID, and we need to cut expenses. It's just getting way out of line in my area, the whole budget program, and I can't justify any more increase. I'd rather live with more mosquitoes, and I'd rather see Summerland and Area F get more of the use out of the program, and they can have some of my budget, no problem.
Thank you. Director Holmes, go ahead, please.
Just following up on Director Getten's question, that 18,000 is designated to other programs, that's kind of connected with this 34,000. Does that mean we lose that 18,000 as well, or is it there's just no connection? It's the same staff.
Yeah, that's just a mechanism. Just tell us how much money you want us to put in the budget, and we'll figure out how to do what you need us to do.
Okay, Director Monteith.
To the chair, I'm concerned that if we go against staff recommendation of increasing a service that they're obviously seeing a need for based on the requests that they're getting, that we might hit a situation where next year we have a shortage because now we're in a deficit. Now we have to recoup that deficit as well as a service for 2022. So I'm hesitant to support the reduction, knowing that there is a 3-year flow of tracking service and that areas that are getting the service are paying more. So I can't support the current motion. Thanks.
Okay, that appears to be all the speakers on the list. Director Monteith, you had another question, or is that a leftover hand? Leftover hand, okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Oh, Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Sorry, to the chair, just a quick one. I'm assuming that we're taking down to the 2020 service rates, but it doesn't change the formula. We're still operating under the existing formula, so it just should be an overall reduction of cost, which then would affect across the whole broad spectrum tied to that same formula that we use.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to stay at the rates that we had in the 2020 budget. Any further comment before I call the question on that? Okay, Director Gittens, do you have a question?
Yeah, so it's not a question. It is just a comment because I hear I want it to be clear that I hear what Director Knodel is saying, along with Director Bush. My concern is by doing this, that it's going to cost us more in labor later on. And I want to see this come back to the table for discussion so we can figure out how to get that labor load that Lisa had mentioned in her program, because the understanding there is that there are greater savings somewhere else. So that's why I'm not going to support the motion. It's not that I don't hear at all what Director Bush or Director Knodel are saying. I just want to make it clear that I want to hear from Lisa on how we save that labor cost if we go this way. So I believe there's more discussion to be had.
Okay, thank you. I see more hands popping up. Director Holmes, please.
Yes, I like to say I hear the concerns as well. I'm not going to support the motion, but I fully support that we bring this bylaw back and take a look at the structure of the program and move it more to users pay like other services. I'm all in support of that, but I can't really support this motion just right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Oberick.
Yes, thank you. And Director Gettens and Director Holmes both said what I was thinking, and I think that's the key. We have to bring this back to get more fairness for Area C and Area G and B, and that seems to me to be real important. Supporting this motion won't get us there, so I won't be supporting the motion, but I do see the need for that review. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bush.
Well, I understand why you don't want to support the motion, because you pay so little towards it. It doesn't really matter to you guys, but the rest of us are paying the lion's share here, and all we want to do is just kind of freeze the cost so that, especially in the next year, another COVID year, that not making these exorbitant tax increases for our taxpayers. And this is what it's about. The mosquito program is still going to go on. All we have to do is keep the amount of money we got. The staff allocates where it has to go, and life goes on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are those leftover hands? Director Gettens, go ahead, please.
I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right thing here, because for Costin, if we freeze it at 2020, you're at $49,000, but 2021 is at $40,000. Am I looking at the wrong budget?
Go ahead, Jim.
The formula changed and the way it was redistributed, and Lisa would have more information. She supplied a new distribution so that it was charged correctly in 2021.
So as a follow-up, wouldn't Area B be paying less by staying with the 2021 budget, or am I misreading something?
Go ahead, Jim.
So what would
Page
happen
229.
Yes, so what would happen is that the formula used for 2020, unless the board says otherwise, it would be the formula for 2021, the new one, which draft 2 has, be used. So when you're saying we want to go back to the 2020 budget, we would put the 2020 dollars in there. But to be fair, we would have the 2021 formula that would be applied against the different users.
So what is that
I would
number
have to
then?
sit down and calculate that, what that would be.
Jim would need a bit of time to calculate those out.
So we don't know we don't know what the result will be with this motion on what the actual dollar numbers will be yet, because you need the time to figure that out.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay. So
Yes.
that's probably another reason then why I hear the conversation. I want to support the conversation, but I can't support this motion.
Okay, Director Oberick. Go ahead, Director Oberick.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I hearing the last two speakers, so there's I'll have to figure that out in a minute. I just wanted to clarify, and for Director Bush specifically, although cost can be a factor, just for his clarification, this isn't about me thinking I pay less than Costin or Willowbrook or Headley. I want to make that real clear. For me and constituents, we really care that it's fair, and I think this formula is really the right approach. We're not at deadline yet. I would encourage directors to give this some more attention and bring it back again before the fairness in the allocation issue, not canceling this program or the budget to.
Okay, if you're still talking, Director Obrick, we've lost you. Okay, all right, so Director Obrick, your hand is still up. Or maybe, yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, folks, we have a motion on the floor to remain at the 2020 levels. Director Obrick, are you able to take your hand down? Unless you're eagerly voting. Okay, maybe we have a stuck hand. Okay, folks, I'm going to call the question then on the motion. All in favor? Okay, hands can come down. Director Knodel, hand come down, please. There we go. Okay, those opposed. Okay, hopefully everybody's using the clicking of the hand, because I can't see the whole screen unless Danny is maybe just going to pull that down, but let's see. We've got, we need to record these though.
Is it close?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And those are opposed?
Those are opposed that are on the screen. So I just want to double check. Right now we have those opposed on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 opposed. Frank is opposed, so you didn't click the hand. That's 9 opposed. Judy, are you opposed? Nodding yes, you're opposed. So we have 10 opposed, 8 on the screen, 8 hand clicks, 2 visual hands, right? So 10 opposed, so that motion fails.
Yes. Okay,
so right now we're back to it being as in the current draft.
Yes.
Okay, so it is as is. Now there are hands up on the screen. Are those left over? Director Robinson, Director Obrick. Director Robinson, did you have a question? Or can you take your hand down? Director Gettins, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you for the chair. So do we need a motion to bring this back, like the request that we had to look at the bylaw or figure out the solution that we're trying to get to? How do we make sure this comes back to the board?
Yeah, no, we're okay. It'll come back. Bill's got that. Director Robinson, you have a question? No, can you take your hand down, please? Danny, can you take your hand? There we go. It's down. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back to Jim.
Okay, I'll speak faster.
For the next item on the budget. And we can put it back up on the screen, please, Danny.
If you go to this one. So on the screen that you'll see the regional programs, the costs per department, and the total budgets for 2021 and 2020. And what I've done is I looked at the major variances, and I just had a brief description of why the variances was there. And that's what we're going to discuss next. So first major variance that I observed was the heritage conservation. And I hate to keep dwelling on this, but a lot of it you're going to hear is about the way the surplus was used. But for 2020 operating budget, and this is a good example, it was 30,506, and in 2021 the draft budget is at 26,891, and yet there's an increase. And the increase is because the surplus was used to artificially reduce the tax requisition. And one of the things I do want to bring up that I haven't said before is the budget that you've seen now, the draft 2 budget, is compliant with the new policy, where you'll still see the surplus, but in the expense side, you're going to see transfer to reserves. And then on the revenue side, you'll also see a transfer from reserves. So a good example would be in the 2021 budget is, let's say a service had $10,000 in surplus. We're not using that $10,000 to artificially reduce the reserve, the tax requisition anymore. There will be a corresponding $10,000 transferred to reserves. And then if there's a requirement to reduce it slightly or for whatever reason, it'll be a transfer from reserves. So you'll see those 3 accounts consistently now on all of the 155 budgets. It doesn't mean that the reserves will always be used, but it's no longer going to be reliant on the surplus to be artificially reduced. So the next area that there was a concern or a material variance, and that's corporate facilities. And that's because the net increase in 2021 funding for authorized capital was 28,831. And the reason I've stated that is because those capital projects are being funded from taxes. Also, the additional expense incurred utilities has gone up $6,100, and there's anticipated equipment expenses for $20,300, and some of that would be because of COVID. You've got an increase in net increase in authorized capital, so that you did increase $221,500 for information services. And the reason I've got that there is if you go back to the last screen, you'll see that it's also shows an increase, and then at the bottom, I've actually deducted it because that's being transferred directly to administration costs. Regional trails, surplus used to reduce the tax requisition in 2020. Vehicle expense projected to increase by 19,000, and there's a wage increase for 9,000. Destruction of pests for Penticton. The surplus was used in that case to artificially reduce the tax requisition, and that was 6,216. And unfortunately, wherever there's a surplus was used in that way, there's very little room for you to look at unless you're going to reduce the service level, because we can't go back. The tax requisition was reduced and the money's gone whenever that happens. The next type of service is rural service, and the rural service is where the majority of electoral area participate, no municipalities. For rural services, all of the properties in the electoral areas contribute. And in the next case, you'll see what they are. So here they are, and this is one of the areas that it may have to change the way the description is. Again, I downloaded directly from Questica, but there's going to be some auditing of the descriptions and making sure that the description is correct. Material increases in these budgets are bylaw enforcement, and the bylaw enforcement is a recoverable budget where it's recoverable from a various number of services, and you're going to see it throughout when in the other services you're going to see for untidy and untidy premises, for instance. In any case, in all the budgets where there is that, because of this bylaw budget, it's increased. And also the noise bylaw, the bylaw enforcement pretty well affected all those services. And that's again because the surplus projected for 2019 was 23,000. It actually came in at 4,000. So there's a huge deficit that had to be made up, and it affects those budgets that I previously talked about. And the administration cost, because of the new formula, also increased. Electoral area administration surplus projected 204,000, actually 151. Huge difference. Administration expense. This is where the formula affected one of the the biggest areas, because up until this formula kicked in, the wages was not included in the min formula. So where the administration saved in 2020, it actually caught up, and it's more closer to the 2019, 2018 administration cost. And a good example is if you go back to this year's administration, you'll see SIR had a $74,000. It's about 13.5 this year, and that had to be made up somewhere. So in areas where it was overcharged this year, it's now what is considered fair. Electoral area planning projected, again, the surplus projected was 150, actual 102, huge difference, hard to make up, and that's a tax increase. And unfortunately, there's enough of that is a concern when you're looking at the overall tax requisition for each of the electoral areas. Subdivision services, surplus used artificially reduced the tax requisition and administration increased by $2,992. Again, it's a common theme, and I hate to keep saying it, but it is directly related to your tax requisitions. And when we have our meetings, you're gonna have to take a hard look at your service level, because it doesn't give you much breathing room because of that. Shared services. So shared services, where only a defined group of properties within one or more electoral areas participate. For shared services, only those participate within the defined service area contribute. And there is quite a few. So what I've done is I itemized them by the type, and then in the last few pages talks about the material variances. So if you go to the next one, so this is a continuing of the shared services. Keep going, more shared services. And then the material variances. So the first one I want to address is Similkameen Recreation Facility, Carameas Area B and G. Authorized FD increased, and that directly increased the tax requisition. So the tax increase that you authorized was 45.9, and the administration cost increase. And when I say increase, it's not 1049, it's an actual increase above the 2019. The Oliver Arena and Sea Recreation Program, revenue reduced. That's directly related to COVID. The Oliver Parks Area C 2020 had a transfer from reserves in the amount of $45,000. The 21 budget does not have a transfer. So that's one of the reasons why that one went up. Just want to state that overall, I've been asked by the commission in the Park and Rec Commission if I could do a consolidated one to make it easier for you to show what the net is, and I will be doing that. Program Oliver and Area C, 21 user fees reduced by $82,250. Again, that would be for COVID. Refuse Oliver and Area C wood chipping, and you're going to see this across the board. The wood chipping increased expense by $32,000. The consultant expenses increased by 20, and administration increased materially on this one. And the one direct reason, as the wood chipping increased, so will the administration costs. And what I've been finding, and I got one as recently as yesterday, where the wood chipping board might want to take a look at this, because there's a lot of clearing of the land there, and these farmers and the owners are asking for us to pay for the wood chipping. They right now, according to the formulas, they pay a quarter, we pay 3/4. And in one case, I believe it's over $80,000. The one I've got on my desk that's not in the system right now. So that's something that when we have our meetings, we're going to have to take a look at. But I'll also have to take a look at the policy to see if there's any wiggle room with this. There's a couple hits, especially in a few minutes, we're talking about Area A. That one alone went from 5,000 to a requested of over 30,000. And that's a huge increase to the taxpayer.
So Jim, we have a question from Director Johansson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, Jim, when the best time to have these discussions, since the refuse is the #1 issue on my list, and it's a shared service between Oliver and Area C. There's probably no point in beating this to death with everybody else listening to us. Is this a meeting that we will set up in the next week to discuss this in detail?
It's up to you. I will make time. It's a shared service, so as we briefly discussed, earlier this week, it would have to be both of you involved in the decisions. And as stated earlier, I will make the time and I'll work around you. You guys are the ones that I'm more flexible than you are, and let me know when you want to come or video conference.
Okay, absolutely. I guess I would propose if there's time after this meeting, we could have it then, or whatever works for you. Director Knodel and I would like to have a serious discussion about the increases in this particular line item.
That's fine. We can do that.
Okay, why don't you connect after this meeting? We don't know how long this meeting's gonna go.
Okay.
And yeah, okay, thank you.
So the next, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
The next material variance, and as I stated earlier about the bylaw, noise bylaw and unsightly increased due to the bylaw expenses, and they're both, you're going to see that for pretty well anytime there's a budget in your area. And again, like I stated, that's unfortunate, but the surplus really put a hard, made it hard for me to give you a good news story on the tax requisition on that. So again, we keep going. Local services. Services where only a defined group of properties within electoral area participate, and for local services only, those participating in the defined service area contribute. And the next slide actually shows what those are. And this is where goes to A to I, and each one of these is where we can have the one-on-one meetings and look at your tax requisitions, and I'll take direction from you.
So Jim, if I can interrupt, we've got a couple questions here for directors, and then before we go through these electoral area ones, we'll take a short break. Just people need to wash them a coffee. But let's go to the questions first. Director Monteith, go ahead, please.
To the chair, I understand the change of no longer using surpluses to artificially reduce taxes, but I'm wondering about a service like bylaw or a service like subdivision planning or those sort of services where I don't know if we need a reserve, do we? Just a question.
Well, there's times when something may happen where there's an extraordinary expenses, or for whatever reason it's under budget, and you may, when it's extraordinary expenses, it's not going to hurt to have a reserve. And remember, the board set a minimum and a maximum, so those services where it's not a very large amount, like victim services, for instance, that would have a very low, high and low. That one there had a maximum. The surplus of $5,000 was used, and in one of your services, I believe it's right on the board right now, third from the bottom, number 10, the tax requisition is $15. And where is it here? No, that's not the one. My eyes are it's up on top. Sorry. Second from the top, $138 for the tax requisition for this year, $5,114, 3,600% increase. It's not going to hurt to have a surplus not a surplus, but a reserve for all your accounts. There's always something that may happen. And again, something like victim services would not have a very high surplus, but it would be there. For 2020, for instance, it would have been helpful to have a $5,000 surplus instead of, a $5,000 reserve, rather than use the surplus and it disappears. As soon as you use the surplus, it's gone forever.
Sorry, can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, go ahead.
I just don't know what we would need a reserve for some services like victim assistance services. I don't see us ever needing a reserve. And I'm wondering historically if we have needed reserves or like there's some services I see needing a reserve for it. I fully support your philosophy. But some of them I'm challenged with, especially when you look at victim services, when you look at electoral area planning. I mean, I don't see where we need reserves for every service. I feel we might be overkilling it in the change. That's just my opinion.
So if I may answer that, if this reserves are only fed through a surplus, the majority of the services. So for victim services, for instance, if there's a surplus in 1 year, why would you use that to reduce the tax requisition? Why not put it into the reserves and if, when needed, use it to keep a flat rate tax increase? So if you take a look at the second from the top line, because of the surplus was used 100%, you've got $138. You got a very happy taxpayer this year. You're having an unhappy taxpayer next year. So like, if you just remember, with the way the formula is, only surplus feeds those reserves. There are some services where it is taxed and is increased in operating, and that's concurrent. There are some that we're doing it. We've just added some more. But for something like that, it's only fed from surplus.
Okay, thank you. We have Director Holmes next.
Yeah, thank you. So I was just wondering, for any given, when you look at the page and there's the expenses, if I want to drill down on those specific expenses, should I talk to the manager responsible for that?
You can. I would suggest you start off with me, and then I'll bring in the manager. If you're concerned, when we set up the meeting, we could bring in the manager at the same time. I think that's more efficient.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I think now is a good time to just take a short 10-minute break, grab a coffee, and we'll start at 10:50. Back with Jim. Okay, welcome back, directors. So the PowerPoint that was up, we're not going to go through the remainder of that because they're area specific, areas A through I. So those directors, if you have not met with Jim yet and you feel you need to review those PowerPoint pages or anything else in your budgets, then please contact Jim and make an appointment with him. So now Jim's going to take us through some of the regional budget, and you were sent out a revised budget about 950 pages or so a few days ago, but you don't need to pull that up on your screen if you don't want to, as we've got the document up on the screen and Jim will work through that. So I'll turn that over to you, Jim. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So we were going to talk about A through I, but those ones there, you as a director have authority to change them when we have our meetings. So if we could go to back to the regional programs where you as a whole have to take a look at, and if you have any questions, concerns about the budgets, this is where we can discuss them. It's more manageable. There's 20 pages here. The actual full budget has 155 pages now. So I'm here to answer your questions. We're going to put, if you have any questions or concerns on the specific service, we'll put it up on the screen so that you can see it. I did talk about some of the material variances, which I addressed 5 of them already, but we can, if you want to talk about more of these, then this is the time we can do it. I'll document whatever changes the board agrees on. You could vote on the changes at this time, and it makes it easier for us to take the budget for first reading in early January doing this. So I'll bring it back to you and I'll wait for questions.
Okay, was there anything specific you needed to point out?
Well, okay, so the ones that I originally flagged was heritage conservation. If there's any further questions, again, the operating budget was lower in 2021 than it was in 2020, and it was a surplus. So there, but if you want to take a look at that, we can discuss that. Corporate facilities, that's also material. We talked about that, and again, the increase for funding authorized. The capital itself was a major concern or a major factor for the increase. Information services, you've seen the ask for capital, which you've authorized. Regional trail is surplus again. That's the issue that created the problem, and the destruction of pests for Penticton. Again, Penticton, it was the surplus used for 2020 that didn't help. When you take a look at the bottom line, it does look like 7.64%, but a lot of that is in administration in other areas. So I put it in and then I took it out just to show what the bottom line is for the regional service. So if there's any questions, we could bring up the budget and talk about it in more detail.
Okay, great. Did anybody have any questions on these regional programs that are on the screen? Anybody have suggested changes, or are you happy with what you are seeing? I'm not seeing anybody with a question or concern.
Judy.
Oh, Judy, sorry, go ahead, Director Sentis.
Muting. Oh, thank you. Jim, you just made a reference to a concern, I believe, if I understood you right, about the heritage conservation. Could you maybe elaborate on that?
So the operating budget for 2020 was 30,506, as I stated. And for 2021, the operating budget is 26,891. Yet the tax requisition is higher. It's a material increase as far as I'm concerned, because the 2019 surplus was artificially used in 2020 to reduce the tax requisition. So that money's gone because it wasn't put into reserves. Now, like I keep saying, happy taxpayer in 2020, unhappy in 2021.
Great. I thank you for that explanation. As my fellow councillors will know, Heritage is something very near and dear to my heart, and I'm happy to see that the RDOS has placed a value on it. And so I'm not wishing for it to be unnecessarily hardship, but I understand your answer. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, looks like we'll keep those as is. Back to you, Jim. Is that it?
I don't know what else to say.
No, we thought we might have questions.
It's very important that I talk to you as directors to look at your other than the regional programs. The sooner we talk, the more time you have to look at the options. Because what I anticipate is that once we have our discussion, and if you'd like, I will bring in the managers wherever I see that there's a material increase. I will assume that you're going to need to talk to the manager. We can talk with the 3 or 4 of us, and you take back whatever information you need and come back and let me know what you want to change. Like I stated, I will make time for you. I'm more flexible than you are, and I will make the changes at the level that you require.
Okay.
I think we just need to adjourn.
Yeah, so we didn't make any changes. We had quite a mosquito discussion there.
Yeah.
So, folks, we are wanting to come forward in January to hopefully do first reading, and then that triggers the ability to go out for public consultation for the electoral area consultation. Yes, go ahead, CAO.
So what I've got is that we want to review the mosquito control program, we want to review the wood chipping program, and we want to look into further the Oliver landfill budget. But that's all I picked up for concerns from this morning. Are there any other services?
I see a question or a suggestion from Director Gettins. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, through the chair. I'm just curious about our next steps here, because I think that the strategic planning and the time for discussion is what's going to set us up for success in 2021. I agree that the mosquito conversation needs to come back to the table, but I'm also have asked a few times, including at the end of our November meeting, that we have space for dialogue so I can hear from other directors, including the area directors. So I'm not sure why we're not doing that right now. I think it's important because the changes that I make to my budget impact other electoral areas, area directors. So I thought this extra strategic planning was going to happen yesterday or today, and I don't think it has. And I think without that dialogue, we're going to miss opportunity to do better. We're not going to be able to align our efforts as electoral area directors. We're not going to be able to collaborate on behalf of the region's residents. And I'm struggling with that because I'm feeling like this is a little bit rushed. And I'm curious to hear when that next strategic meeting is going to be happening.
Well, we had it on corporate services yesterday, and it'll come back in January in the form of a business plan. But I would say there's probably time right now, Director Gettins, if you wanted to discuss some program specifically.
Well, I think it is the strategic approach that we're taking for 2021. You know, I am frustrated that one of my priorities was dumped from the corporate business plan without any input from me. That was the West Bench land. This is the West Bench. This is from yesterday from the corporate plan. On November 12th, the West Bench Park acquisition was on the plan. And then at the meeting yesterday, it's no longer on the plan, but it's on a pending list. And I don't.
It is on the pending list.
Right.
Because
and I'm unclear.
There's nothing we can do right now. And until the school district decides that they're interested, because they're the party in this that we have to deal with. I mean, I'd be happy to put that back in the plan. Will anything change? No, not until we hear back from the school district.
So when something is pending like that, and we are waiting for another entity to engage with us, to me, that's a rub, because I think the residents are counting on me to do the work for them, and then I'm relying on the RDOS to keep things moving at a staff level with these entities that are outside of the RDOS. So I want to ensure that these type of projects that are working in collaboration aren't going to be approached in a passive passive manner.
I can assure you, in fact, I attended the meeting myself with the new superintendent, is that we have our request in and they're aware of it. They're too busy right now. They clearly told us that. When they're ready to discuss that with us, they're going to let us know.
Sure.
I think the confusion is, Director Gittens, that we all have lots of projects that you're not going to necessarily see on the strategic plan, because if you don't have money attached to it or certain things haven't happened, it's not on that corporate action plan, but it doesn't mean it's dropped. All the managers have quite a list of projects. You'll see my Area E Parkland Acquisition Project is pending, even though I'm 99% certain that's going to happen in February. But technically the money is not in place, so it's not something that we can guarantee is going to happen.
We know the project's there. If it's activated, we'll put the resources necessary to move it forward. But at this point, we don't have any indication that's going to happen soon.
Yeah, it won't disappear.
Sure. And so is there then going to be an opportunity to hear from the staff about those business plans that we don't see, and how our priorities and things are moving forward for 2021? Like, are we going to hear from community services and the different things that we're working on? What is not happening is opportunity for me to hear from Area I, for example, on what they're working for 2021. And is there a way for that director and myself to connect on something? Without having this conversation, we don't have a real choice except to stay pretty siloed. And we talked yesterday about the KVR, and there's a portion Area I that might be more easily to move forward on than what's in my portion. But without Director Monteith knowing my priorities and having an opportunity to discuss them, how can she loop me in a way that best serves the residents? And that's what we're missing, in my opinion. We talked about a number of different things that we want to talk about right now, but I'm feeling like we're rushed, is my feeling. And this is our chance to set up for 2021 and to be successful.
So if you're both talking about trails, you should have communicated with the community services manager. It should be on Mark's list. Every director should be communicating with the department managers. They should know what you're interested in, and they should be able to pair things up if it's applicable. So if you're not communicating with the managers on what you're interested in, that would be where you need to go. An example came up yesterday when it was asked about the grant application for the Naramata Museum. How did that get on the list? Well, I've spent about 3 years on that with different stages that I've communicated through Mark Woods, because that's his department. And that's how it ended up on the list, because we've gotten to the point where we're ready for a grant application. So if you're not communicating with the managers, things potentially will get missed.
So to that, Chair, if I might just follow up, and then I would like to hear from other directors on this. I do communicate with the managers. I have provided a list. What's not happening is this opportunity for me to connect around this table and with staff to how we do things together in 2021. It's not. I asked at the last meeting in November to have more opportunity for strategic talk, strategic discussion. And that hasn't happened yesterday or today. And that I had it that I thought this is what we were going to be doing on these next few days. After this time together, we get into the year and we get very busy, and our board meetings are full with the decisions that the board meetings have to make. And I think we're missing an opportunity by rushing through this and not having dialogue.
I would say throw it out there and let's have a discussion.
Yeah, yesterday's strategic planning was under corporate for anything to be raised that directors felt was missed for strategic planning. So that was there for yesterday. That was a pretty rushed,
Chair, that was a pretty rushed session. We were rushing to get to the board meeting to start on time. Are there any other directors that are feeling this, or is this just, am I alone on this?
Director Gittens, I didn't hear you raise any specific items that you wanted to discuss. So we need to hear that. Otherwise, we move on if directors are content. It gives the assumption you're content. So if there's something that is missed, then as CAO just said, throw it out there now. Now's the time, like, let's tackle it, whatever you have for area F that you would like to bring forward or regionally, then let's do that now. I do see a question though. If we have a couple questions or maybe suggestions, if we could go to those and see what folks have in mind. Director Bush, go ahead, please.
Well, one of the problems is we're not getting together now, and to do this by Zoom, we're missing the chance to talk to our other area directors, like offline or whatever, and that's what we're really missing here.
Oh, sorry, you said the offline discussion?
No, the discussion in person.
Oh, in-person discussion. Yeah, well, and that's what we've got to do now. We don't have any other options with COVID unless directors are talking amongst themselves separately, as often did happen in the past after board meetings.
Yeah, but we can't interrupt everybody to talk to Sabrina or whatever on trails or whatever. It just doesn't work this way. And this is what we're missing.
Okay, well, and at a board meeting, we wouldn't interrupt. You would raise your hand and make your point, just like we need you to do here on Zoom or WebEx. I know it's challenging, but you've got to get those ideas out, folks, or questions. Director Roberts, did you have something, or did you take? No, go ahead then.
Yeah, thanks to the chair. And I think sometimes, again, a us being new, finding our way forward, and then COVID has definitely given us a little bit of a kick in the gut in regards to, you almost feel like you're still in your first year in regards to following process, as stated by Director Bush with the whole Zoom end of it. But a good portion of it as well too is like, it's understanding, is it better, like we've constantly been told, of course, CAO Newell is our employee, and we're supposed to go through him. Now I get permission to hit through him to see each of the managers, or when you're saying that you've gone over the years, do you just go to the managers in regards to specific? So sometimes, like because I'm a very busy person, unfortunately, in regards to my other day job, like other people, I'm just trying to find process. And so right now, in regards to some of the things we're saying, I want to make sure I have that clear. Should I not go to Chair Newell, CAO Newell, and then ask him who best to see, then go see the manager, et cetera, et cetera? I just want a little clarity on that, if other people are having issues with that.
Different members use different approaches. So coming to me is fine. We're pretty informal with regards to interaction between elected officials and our management group. I'd encourage you not to go below that, but certainly you're free to go and talk to a manager.
Director Monteith, you're next, please.
To the chair, I really feel the same as Director Gettins. I feel this year, and I don't know whether it's COVID or what the challenge is, but it does feel rushed. The last 2 years, we were asked as elected officials to submit strategic planning lists for our area. And when I did, I got responses back from CAO Newell, but I don't feel like any of my area priorities are making it to the corporate plan. And I don't feel like I'm able to do my job if I can't bring ideas forward. But yet, when I talk to staff, they're not always making it forward, but yet they are community pressures that I'm feeling from my area. So if I don't get the opportunity to bring ideas forward and talk to other directors and find out that other directors are having the same challenge, I feel like we're spinning our wheels and we're not getting anywhere fast, but yet we're asking our taxpayers to pay more money for something that they're not seeing the full value for. And I'm really challenged by this. And it seems to be more this year than in prior years, but the pressures are harder when we're not able to look at economies of scale, working together. And it just seems to be continuing. And I don't know how to get our our ideas brought forward if we're not able to have those discussions in strategic planning so that they do make it to the corporate plan, so that we have those conversations before we formalize a budget. That's sort of where I'm going.
So if it's a specific local priority, we expect you to bring forward that in your budget discussions when you meet with Mr. Safino. And other than that, if it's a carry forward project, like I'm not sure where we're going off the rails as far as identifying priorities. If it's something that's already started, we don't need to see it on the corporate business plan every year because it's already entrenched. It's already ongoing. I know that we have a lot of projects on the corporate plan that either require a grant in order to introduce, or we need some sort of action by another organization. So for us, those get frustrating. It's like when somebody comes in for a development permit and if they don't have any plans or process to it, we can't do anything if the application's incomplete. So then we refer it back to the applicant, but yet it's sitting in our books without any ability to implement for years. So that's why we created that pending list, is we know the projects are there. We can't do anything about it until there's some other group that we're dependent on in order to activate it. But as soon as they do, it's already on the plan. We'll just move it up into the priority box. But I'm not sure why directors aren't speaking up when we have these opportunities at the workshops or when we bring sort of a draft plan forward. Like, speak up.
I think there is confusion over what goes on a corporate action plan and what doesn't. And just because you don't see something there doesn't mean it's not happening. It may be a carry forward. It may be just waiting for funding approval. There's a lot of reasons why you don't see something there. I have several projects you're not seeing on corporate action plan, but they didn't just disappear.
So on trails, we do have that Parks Trails Master Plan that was on the list for 2020, and because with COVID there's no consultation opportunities, they deferred that, but it's back on the plan for 2021. So there's going to be lots of opportunity to discuss plans for trails. But if there's a specific piece of work, like a portion of a trail, that would go on the Community Services Department business plan. Like that's like a project list.
Okay, let's hear from Director Spencer Coyne. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm just a little confused by, I don't know what Director Gettins was talking about, working with Director Monteith, I think it was. So yesterday and well, for about a week now, Director Roberts and I talking about a couple projects. Director Bauer and I have been talking about regional transit and how to make that more equitable. And we've, Director Bauer has brought that to the district to ask for a regional transit rather than Princeton paying for the transit. Director Roberts and I have been discussing back and forth another option for the residents in Headley using some of the services in Princeton and how that would look, and he's forwarded that off to staff. So I mean, I don't understand. Like, is it that you don't feel like you can call Director Monteith, or is it? I'm just confused as to what you're asking from the rest of us. Because even Director Coyne and myself, we've been discussing a couple projects, and those will come before the board once that's done. So I'm just confused. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess a good suggestion. There's no reason why people can't phone one another and talk about opportunities or projects. And then if you feel something is not on the list, then make sure it comes forward. But it may very well be on the list under a different heading than you realize, such as regional trails, for example. Director Trainer, you're next, please. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. being new to the RDOS and kind of still understanding how you guys all work together, but I'm just wondering, is there ever an opportunity or a workshop day where directors, specifically from the electoral areas, get to share their plans for the year or their hopes or goals, and also projects that they would like considered for grant opportunities if they come up that year? So what I mean is like where each person presents what they want to do for the year, and then that way everybody hears it, they all hear the same thing. So I'm just wondering, is there that kind of opportunity? I'm thinking that might be what Director Gettins is getting at, is just an opportunity to share what you want to do for the year and let everybody else hear it.
Well, that would typically be our strategic planning workshop. So we did one on the 12th, and typically for us, we spend more time at the front of a term. So the first year, the second year, identifying projects, and then the third and fourth year, it's about implementation. And a lot of them are carried forward. But I mean, there's always new opportunities. So we definitely did truncate the strategic planning workshop this year, but that would normally be the opportunity. And then again, when anything like a draft report comes out of those workshops, that's another opportunity. When we bring the business plan forward, that's another opportunity. And of course, we tie our budget and our business plan together, so they have to come together.
Right, and Director Trainer, you'll soon see that we have quarterly updates come in from our managers as to what they've been working on for that quarter and what is projected for the future quarters. So you'll see ongoing updates on projects and services. Back in August, the board was informed that the managers were starting to work on strategic planning on projects and budgeting so that we could get to where we are at now. And that's a trigger for an opportunity for directors to get a hold of the managers and make sure that things they're working on carry forward or new projects get put on the list, because it does come down to capacity as well, that those departments have the capacity to handle what all 9 electoral areas need or are requesting to do, as well as the regional and shared services. So
can I just quickly follow up? We do the same thing in Summerland. We get updates from all of our management, and it's really helpful. But I was just, as a newcomer to the board, just an observation from the outside, and again with COVID being a big challenge this year, I just think that maybe a day or a workshop where again the directors could bring forward just their plans for the year and projects that they might want considered for grants. And that way everybody can hear it and it's, all out there. That might be helpful, but I mean, if you guys have a process already, that's fair enough as well.
Okay, thank you. Director Gettins, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just to help with what I'm asking for here, what we don't have an opportunity is for rural directors, exactly what you're saying, Director Trainer, to get together with staff. I would love to hear what staff have as priorities for our area, and I do talk to them. I have very good working relationships, but it's always siloed about Area F. So ideally, it would be great to have the management team and the rural directors and any municipal director who is interested come and join. When I first was elected here, I was advised that rural directors are actually in competition with one another for staff time and resources. And it's hard working under that. And I know that's no one's intention, but when you have 9 different areas, you have 9 different demographics, you may have 9 to an unlimited different number of goals. So with municipalities, and I've worked within a municipality, it's like you're all on one big boat and you're all like paddling together down the stream. You've got your mayor and your council and your staff, and you have the goal, and it's a clear goal that you're going towards. And sure, someone may stop paddling because a vote didn't go their way, but eventually they're going to get back on board because you all have the same end game. As a rural director, there isn't that opportunity to share the goal with the region and my neighbor on things because I don't know what Area I is working on. I don't know what Area D is working on. So it's impossible for me to find those connections without the conversation. Even going through this budget process today and not hearing from the different directors, I would say that our communication around the mosquito program is a perfect example. How that is impacting Director Knodl's residents, I can't see that without having that conversation, because I'm not that representative. I'm not in Area C, and I don't hear from those residents. And that is what's missing. And it's really hard to stay in a silo. Anybody who's worked with me on a project knows that I collaborate and I share information. And if we don't allow for this dialogue to happen, I just have to stay in my silo. And I just think we could do better as a region. And that's what my request was in November. I thought that's what we were going to have set up here. And yeah, it's a little bit frustrating. I think, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because I see somebody else wants to talk.
So Director Gittens, your request is for a rural workshop is what I'm hearing. Rural area directors, the 9. If municipal directors want to participate, they're welcome to, but it sounds like more of an electoral area director workshop with managers involved to discuss projects.
You know what, that would be great. And I really value our municipal directors. You know, I have to work closely with Summerland and Penticton, and thankfully I love working with Penticton and Summerland. But yeah, we don't have the same opportunity that municipal councilors or council does. It's like we're dealing with 9 little communities trying to figure out how to share staff resources. We've got one staff team, 9 little communities, all with very different needs, all with different demographics. And like, I want to do well for the region. Like, that's important to me. That's why I was excited to run for this position as an elected official. And when you're out here on your own as an elected official in an area, you need that space to be created because you need to share your ideas. And we need to know how, exactly what Aaron's saying, like what grants are coming up? What do I need to be prepared? Does it make better sense to connect with another director or another municipality? Those are the conversations that we never have the time to make. And those are the conversations that I think are the most valuable.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Director Monteith next. Go ahead, please.
To the chair, I fully agree with Director Gittens and Director Trainer. We are told that if it's not on the corporate business plan, it doesn't get done. So when we don't see things or ideas that are in our area that are important for our residents, not on the corporate plan, then I feel that our ideas are not being heard and we're not going to get those opportunities. And that scares me. We're also told that we're not supposed to have those side conversations, and those are not encouraged as a good governance system. So I feel that we're stuck without having those opportunities to get together and have discussions, to learn about what's happening in Tulameen and Princeton and all around. We're not making good regional decisions. And I don't feel that we can if we don't hear from each other. And that is the municipal directors as well, because I don't know what's happening in Summerland and I don't know what they're doing there. So I feel like we're so busy doing business that we're forgetting that important part in planning. And if we don't plan as a region, I don't know if we can make good decisions.
Okay, thank you. I think there's some confusion about side discussions. By all means, directors talk to each other about what's going on in their areas. It's when you talk ahead of time about what's on a board agenda that's coming to a vote, say on a rezoning or things like that ahead of time. That's where that shouldn't be happening when we look at the Sunshine Law. But if you want to talk about projects or ideas, or you want to call and talk to another director about the Bearware program in their area and how well that's worked or not worked, those things are certainly encouraged. So, but we can look at this idea of a workshop for rural directors, which would invite municipal, of course, and managers to talk, but we would need each director who's participating to be prepared to present on their ideas and what they have done and what they'd like to do moving forward. Director Bob Coyne, go ahead, please.
Seems to be a lot of, I don't know, maybe it's good that people get to air their feelings or their thoughts or whatever, but I have never ever been felt where I was in competition with any other director any other area for attention or time with staff. Staff has always been very accommodating. I have a nasty habit of popping in just to see about things when I'm in Penticton. If I have questions, I phone and I ask. If I have other concerns, I call other directors and talk to them, get feedback, kick around ideas. It's like I was elected to a different regional district than what some of the other directors are. I really am not feeling the confusion that some of the directors seem to be having here. I thought we covered things pretty well in our strategic planning. It was a little more strained this year with all the COVID stuff. But I don't know, I just chat with other directors and I've never had any issues. I think things are going pretty darn smoothly. We don't have our coffee breaks like we had where people chat at the board. I mean, but if you've got questions, for God's sakes, phone one another and talk to one another. We don't have to do everything at the board meeting. If you got questions before the board meetings, phone one of your other directors and ask them, or phone the chair, or phone the CAO. That's where you get this information from. You have to put some effort into the other side of it, because we don't have those meetings. And I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful or not nice to one another here, but I think we're kind of blowing things out of the water here for no reason. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Bauer next.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, Director Coyne. You've said exactly what I was going to say in a very delicate and appropriate way. It does indeed take some effort to read all the resources that are out there online or in printed form. So there's lots of resources. You can inform yourself about other areas and what they're doing. You can always pick up the phone, which we always do, and there's nothing wrong with safe meetings and outside COVID, of course. There's other options. I don't understand it either. I think this is, like Director Coyne said, blown way out of proportion. When I have an issue as a municipal director, and in the Similkameen, there is a lot of shared services. I go to Bill. If Director Roberts or Director Bush can't make it, I'll bring their issue forward. And I'm happy to talk about issues that concern the whole Similkameen, all the way up to Princeton as well. I talked to Director Spencer Coyne, whether it's environment or whether it's economic development or transit, as he mentioned. So I really don't see an issue here. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Director Sentis. Go ahead, please.
Am I on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm just reflecting on why the regional districts were created in the first place. And it was to create that cooperation, working together. So I agree with both Bob and Manfred. I think we have opportunity. If someone's concerned that they're not being heard, pick up the phone. There's so many ways to communicate. And I worry about a structure that would see an us and them happen in the RDOS. I'm very sensitive to that. I think we have to be conscious of each other. And if area directors feel that they need to talk with each other more, I think they should do that. But I think we need to be conscious that we all need to hear the conversations. Otherwise, making the decisions becomes very awkward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Robinson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I would echo everything that everybody else has already mentioned. I recall, I'm trying to remember whether it was, I guess it was 2 years ago, or I might be getting that confused with my last time on council, but there was a meeting up in West Kelowna, I believe it was, where all the newly elected officials went and spent a whole day kind of learning about the system and how it works and whatnot. And I think it's easier for those of us who've been around for maybe too long that we're used to that. But I pick up the phone all the time and talk to other regional district directors. I talk to other councillors in other cities. For instance, when we go to UBCM, you know, a lot is made about the meetings that we go to. The media loves to talk about that. And I've always found as a councillor that I get most of my really important information from the opportunity to talk to the other councillors at UBCM. That's where I get all my best ideas. Usually over a glass of wine. But anybody who's feeling like that, please pick up the phone, give me a phone call, give any of the directors a phone call that have been here for a while, and we'd be happy to point you in the right direction. And of course, that's what staff is for. You know, start with the CEO and they'll point you in the right direction. But it's clear to me anyway, after this conversation this morning, that some of the newer directors definitely need to get together, and maybe we could put on a little, you know, an effort, a program for them to kind of bring them up to speed on how this is, because the learning curve is like, you feel like you're upside down for the first 2 years. So welcome to our group, but we're here to chat anytime. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Bauer, is that a leftover hand? Yeah, okay. Director Sentis, is that leftover? Oh, you're still on, you're on mute, Director Sentis? Okay.
Off.
So did you have another comment, Director Sentis, or no?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, but just so that Director Trainer understands, because she's a valid question. Those programs of introduction to how an RDOS works happened 2 years ago, but the unfortunate thing with some of the rotation with the municipalities is that you've been eliminated from that. So I think that's a very fair point that you're making. And maybe we can look at that. Like, you know, Katie and I, for example, are fortunate. We're coming in for the last 2 years representing Penticton. We've both been here before for a significant number of years. And so it's very easy for us to catch up. But I'm sensitive to what Director Trainer is saying, and wondering, Chair, if maybe for those opportunities where someone is new, they can have the same opportunity that was given, you know, at the time of the results of the election.
Okay, thank you. Well, we did have a governance workshop, but it is hard to do multiple sessions again, I think, with a board of 19. Yeah. It is a challenge midway through the mark. Okay, so Director Gittens has a suggestion on a workshop, it sounds like, that is rural, with the 9 rural directors or whoever's interested and available to be there, as well as municipal, should they wish to participate, and that would include managers. But I'd like to find out who's interested. I'd like to do a bit of a straw poll and just see, because there's no point in booking a workshop that might maybe just have 2 people, unless those 2 people want to get together on their own with a few managers. So let's just find out who would be interested in doing a workshop. Possibly that would be, I'm guessing, a half-day session. we'd have to go with the flow on that. So if I can just first start by checking with the rural directors. Director Trainer, if you could just remove your hand for a second. Okay, thank you. So directors, please raise your hand, EA directors, if you would like to do a workshop to focus on our areas and possible maybe shared projects. Please raise your hand if you're interested in that. Okay, so we've got Director Gettins, Oberick, Monteith, Roberts. Let's have a look here. Did I miss anyone? Anybody that I've missed, please wave your hand. Okay, so we've got 4 directors there who are interested. Municipal directors, any that would be interested in participating? Director Vasilaki, Holmes, Rieger. Did I miss anybody? Trainer, thank you. And I'll check again. Anybody I missed who'd be interested in that workshop? Okay, I think I've got everybody, but of course, if we could pull this together, we would certainly do an invite out to everybody. Okay, so we'll see what we can pull together on that. And of course, checking on availability of managers, because it sounds like that's important that we have some department managers involved in that session. Okay, so this is technically a budget meeting. So going back to Jim, was there anything you needed to present on regional services?
The only other thing is I will get a hold of Oliver and Area C regarding the refuse disposal and set up a conference meeting on that.
Okay.
I've just been crunching some numbers here, and I'll talk to the manager in charge of the department first and bring him in and see what we could do.
Okay, so that would be with Director Johansson and Director Knoll.
Correct.
To set up to discuss that. Okay, great, thank you. CIO, anything further on this?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair. I've
Okay.
got some follow-up to do on some issues.
Sure, okay. Board of Directors, did anybody else have any further suggestions, questions, concerns about the draft budget that's being presented today? Okay, so not seeing any, I'd like to once again remind everybody, if you have some, oh, Director Roberts, sorry, I see your hands up. Go ahead, please.
Sorry to the chair. Yeah, I've got some questions, but they more tie about some of the joint things in Area GB in the village, some different title things that I didn't quite understand, but I'm assuming I'll just set that up at a separate time.
Yep.
Okay, yes, great. Thank you very much, Director Roberts. So reminder to everybody, especially EA directors, if you are uncertain about some things that you see in the budget that you directly influence, please make sure you set up an appointment with Jim to meet with him, either in person or over the phone, so that those can get clarified for January. And Jim has put in a request to us that we try and do all of that by December 31st, if you can, so that he can bring forward those final changes for January 7th, and we'll see how things go on the 7th. Okay, if there is nothing further, I am looking for a motion to adjourn from corporate services. Director Robinson and Director Bauer, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody, and get in touch with Jim as soon as you can if you need an appointment. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.